The name Tucson is derived from the O'odham word Tucson, which roughly translates to at the base of the Black Hill, which is referring to Centennial Peak, also known as a mountain. It has been said and debated that Tucson is one of the most continuously inhabited cities in the United States. There are numerous historic Native American sites found all over Tucson. Some that have been excavated, archived, buried, and then developed over. Others have been preserved for future generations, and some have yet to be discovered. Some of the sites that have been excavated and then buried over are in downtown Tucson. This map shows where some of these sites have been found and what type of structures were found. These structures belong to the Hohokam. Hohokam pit houses, pits, and early agricultural pit houses have been found between Stone and Main on Church Avenue. It appears some even beneath the streets of Alameda. So far, there have been about 80 pre-contact sites found throughout downtown Tucson, and it is rumored that there is perhaps a ball court yet to be found. This map is a picture of what the same area looks like today, completely developed. It's impossible to tell by looking at this map that the Hohokam inhabited this place long before we did. Part of this area was used as this year's Tucson Meet Yourself. Most do not realize they walk right over history. Some of the sites that have been found, like those at the current location of the Pima County Consolidated Justice Court complex on Stone Avenue, had been excavated prior to the construction of the complex, which yielded one of the oldest pit structures found and dated to around the Middle Archaic period. A radiocarbon date test was done from mesquite charcoal, which provided a date of 2620 through 2460 BC, which is about 4,500 years ago. This is a map of what the area looks like today. It is important to note that while a lot of these sites have been buried and developed over, others have been preserved, respected, and housed within current structures. There are about 5 early agricultural pit structures that have been found so far downtown, one of which has been radiocarbon dated to the early Seneca phase, which dates to 800 through 400 BC. This pit structure was stabilized and can be viewed at the Presidio San Agustin del Tucson Museum. The Hohokam had inhabited Tucson to about 1450 AD. Hohokam pottery was also found at the Presidio San Agustin del Tucson Museum and has been put on display. The Hohokam are known for this type of pottery and was used to store food and water. The pottery varies in style, shape, and design, which were elaborate and beautifully created from clay and sometimes tempered with mica. The Hardy site, located at the Fort Lowe Park, is another major site in Tucson. It was used as a military fortress in 1873 and was excavated in the 1970s. It is believed that soldiers had built the fortress there because they noticed artifacts scattered about that were left by the Hohokam. When the Hardy site was excavated, they found 9 pit structures, soil mining pits, and roasting pits that were used for food items. The pit houses found were built atop older pit houses, indicating that the site had been reused a number of times, and it dated to the Middle Recon phase of 1000 to 1100 AD, to the start of the Tanqueray phase of 1150 AD to 1300 AD. Feature 130 at the Hardy site contained a large pit with post holes, which the Hohokam people used to build the walls for their pit houses. This pit was about 201 square feet. There is evidence to suggest that this pit house had burned and the occupants had left behind 2 ceramic vessels, a matete and a mano. A mortar that was found left upside down contained red orche pigment inside, which itself suggests the occupants were making ceramics inside this pit house. These structures, also at the Hardy site, are believed to be storage rooms as they house no hearth. In the ground are flat, rounded spots used to store upright storage vessels for foods and perhaps water. These storage rooms were also burned down before being abandoned, which revealed some of the local materials used to build the structures, like saguaro ribs, reeds, and wood beams. It is believed that all the pit houses at the Hardy site were purposely set on fire, and it begs the question, why?
Mission Garden is one of the oldest and longest cultivated areas in the entire United States. It is located in Tucson, Arizona, near the base of a mountain and Sentinel Peak. The garden was fully established by the Spanish around 1780 and is known as the initial birthplace of Tucson. Although archaeological evidence and history tells us that this area was long before inhabited 1780. There have been findings from the Archaic and Paleo-Indian period of this area being lived in and taken care of. Examples include pit house structures, spears, pottery, basketry, as well as tools and grinding stones that all can be dated by experts. It was also inhabited by the Tohono and the Hohokam people, and it continued to be lived and served by these people throughout time. In the 1870s, the Chinese came through this area as the Southern Pacific Railroad was being established and built. This land is not only one of the most resilient areas in all of Tucson, but it has been continuously farmed and cultivated for more than 4,000 years. The Santa Cruz River flowed right by the Mission Garden, so it made it an ideal place to live, grow, cultivate, and farm. Over the many years, the irrigation system has been updated and expanded. The entire garden is dedicated to different cultures and their specific sections that grow and harvest those culturally appropriate foods. For example, there is a Chinese, Spanish, and Tohono Hohokam garden that each grow their culturally appropriate food, plants, and medicine. The vegetable fruit gardens are considered an oasis in the desert or a food forest that combines European and indigenous species of vegetables, fruits, plants, and medicinal herbs. The types of food and fruits that are grown at the Mission Garden include melons, different types of beans, garlic chives, corn, squash, pomegranates, figs, melons, agaves, potatoes, spinach, tobacco, cotton, cactus fruits, cactus pads, mesquite pods, and peppers. And more traditional foods and plants include goosefoot, which is an edible plant and seed, pigweed, which is a nutritious leaf with vitamins and calcium, sweetweed, which is a vegetable leaf, and tansy mustard, which is a medicine used for stomach aches. Mission Garden has an orchid that has 167 fruit trees and 36 grapevines. Apricots, pears, mulberries, plums, limes, oranges, peaches, grapefruit, olives, and grapes are just a few of the examples of the many species of plants and trees that can and have thrived in this area. The many cultures that have contributed to the Mission Garden, as mentioned, are the Hohokam, the Tohono dating back to the Proto-Historic along with the post-contact, Spanish, Chinese, Mexican, and of course colonial. Mission Garden has been awarded the Historic Preservation Award and continues to be a nonprofit organization aimed at creating, building community engagement, teachings, and providing food and history to all of Tucson. The diversity of the garden and what is grown here from season to season not only demonstrates Tucson's inhabited history of those who have and still do live here, but it also is a prime example of the many cultures that have built and made Tucson what it is today.
Saguaro National Park in Tucson, Arizona is home to many indigenous archaeological finds. The Hohokam people were some of the first to inhabit this land, leaving behind pottery shards, art, tools, jewelry, and many other belongings which have since offered researchers a glimpse into their lives. From 200 to 1450 AD, the Hohokam lived in villages in what we now call Saguaro National Park, venturing into both the Rincon and Tucson mountains. They were skilled farmers and created a complex irrigation system that allowed them to grow crops such as corn, beans, and squash in an otherwise arid environment. Around 1450, the Hohokam abandoned their permanent structures and assumed a more nomadic, hunter-gatherer style of living. They are the ancestors of the Tohono O'odham people that live in the area today and continue the traditional practices. The petroglyphs at Saguaro National Park are considered one of the most premier rock art sites in North America, being some of the best examples of Hohokam rock art in the Southwest. The rock art in the form of etched petroglyphs and painted pictographs are created by etching, pecking, or scraping designs into the dark patina found on the surface of sandstone and other rocks. What purpose does all this rock art serve? It is not known whether the purpose of the petroglyphs was ceremonial, artistic, or a combination of uses. Some may look at the rock art as a reflection of Hohokam culture, or perhaps tell stories of their ancient ritualistic practices. Some possible purposes of the rock art include hunting, fertility, spiritual symbols, boundary markers and landmarks, records of important events, clan symbols, and solstice or calendar markers. This particular carving is on a rock that is tilted to 32 degrees, which is also the latitude at Saguaro National Park. When a small rock is placed in the center, this creates a shadow that keeps track of the seasons and upcoming equinoxes. The rock's shadow also disappears at noon, indicating the possibility of a sundial at work. There are examples of both abstract geometric and spiral designs, as well as depictions of animals, handprints, and people. The petroglyphs can be found in the Tucson Mountain District of the park along the Signal Hill and Hunts Mesa Trail. The petroglyphs have remained in pretty good condition and certainly evoke wonder and respect for their age and their significance to the original creators. The Tohono O'odham Baidij, or Saguaro fruit harvest, is a time-honored tradition. O'odham teachings have long maintained that the Hashan, the Saguaros, are their sacred relatives and that the first Saguaro started as a human. They see the Baidij as a gift from their relatives, and harvesting the fruit is a celebration. The practice is an important part of fulfilling the O'odham Himdag, which is a way of being and holistic life path that values living in balance and mental, physical, and spiritual health. The harvest typically begins in June, which is when the O'odham celebrate the new year, and the fruits are most ripe for picking. With the use of ladders and long poles called quapids, they can knock down the highest fruit, which are then cooked down and made into syrups, jams, and wines. The Saguaro fruit harvest is an important cultural event for the O'odham people as it connects them with their ancestors and traditions. In this video from the park's YouTube channel, Tanisha Tucker explains the tradition of the harvest as it was taught to her by her mother, Stella Tucker. Stella was an O'odham elder who was known for upholding the tradition of the annual harvest up until her passing in 2019. She has taught thousands about Saguaro fruit harvesting for more than 20 years, aiming to keep the ancient ritual alive.
Hello, my name is Tanisha Tucker, and I am a saguaro harvester, and I pick here at Saguaro National Park West. My mother, her name was Stella Tucker, and she also was remembers harvesting at a very young age. So then she really wanted to make sure that this tradition would continue on. Her goal was to make sure that this tradition stayed alive and that people still continued to cook and harvest and continue on with the wine ceremonies and, just for the process so it wouldn't ever be lost. So usually the harvest roughly starts around May, June is the month when everything's really ready. And you can tell when the fruit is ready because it starts to, either it will turn red at the tips or it will start to just completely open up. So the process usually starts very early in the morning, preferably 6 a.m., 6:30. We like to get out and start harvesting and harvest for maybe anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. The pods are usually left out by the saguaro. What we were taught by the older ones, the elders, is that you leave the pod face up underneath the saguaro, and that ask the Creator for more rain. After that, you bring the fresh fruit back. You're processing it, and then you're adding water, cleaning out any leftover pods that maybe got left in. After that, you place it on the fire, and it boils for anywhere to maybe an hour, hour and a half, depending on how much fruit you have in there. And what happens when that starts to boil, there's a foam that comes up to the top, and you are watching it at the same time you're skimming that foam off. After that, the fruit is taken off. It goes through 2 straining processes. It goes through one, a metal mesh, and then the second, it goes through a cheesecloth, which cleans out all the pulp and the fiber and the seeds. And after that, you'll have a syrup, and you'll start to see it thicken up. All the water will evaporate. Once you finish cooking your syrup, you jarred it, you take a little bit of water and you swish it around in that pot you have, and then you add it into a jar and you let it sit, and it'll start to ferment. Yeah, that's what is served at the wine ceremonies. And those are very important because it continues with the harvesting cycle. You know, she wanted to make sure, she even told me, you know, I don't care where you are, you know, out in the world, just make sure you always come back here in the summer. You guys keep this alive because, you know, you don't want to lose this. You know, it's still here, we're still here.